You're listening to Loving BDSM Podcast, episode 28. Hey everybody, Kayla Lords here. Today, let's talk about small and big ways to reconnect in your DS relationship. Welcome to the Loving BDSM Podcast. If this is your first time listening, glad to have you. If you're back for another week, welcome back. Loving BDSM is produced every Friday for your kinky pleasure and education, and show notes are found at kaylalords.com. Come back often and feel free to add the podcast to your favorite RSS feed or iTunes. If you love what you hear, we'd love a good review on iTunes to help other kinksters find us. You can follow me on Twitter at Kayla Lords or stalk John Brownstone at southernsirsplace.com. All links are in the show notes. Hey y'all, don't forget that I'm now on Patreon looking for kinky patrons to help me keep the podcast and my writing going. Anyone who can and wants to show their love can make a monthly pledge for as little as $1 a month. Go a little higher and you get perks, including monthly videos of me talking about kink, sex, writing, you name it. Your support will help me upgrade the equipment I use for the podcast, help me have more time to create more and better episodes, and even make the podcast ad-free, which would be great. You can stop at any time and no worries. If you just can't afford to do it or it's not your thing, I totally get it. And I still love you just for listening to me each week. Okay, done with that. Let's get to the show. Let's get to the good stuff. The reason we're here today. Now, if you listened to last week's episode, you know that I traveled for a week without John Brownstone. Ooh, sad face. So, while we had different ways to stay connected while we were apart, we still needed to reconnect again when I came home. But really, reconnections are necessary for a bunch of different reasons. You know, maybe you've been working opposite shifts and you finally have a day or two together. Maybe one of you was sick and so nothing kinky was happening at all. Maybe you've been apart for any reason, long-term, short-term, doesn't matter, and just now you're together again. And hell, maybe you got into a routine and a rut, something I've touched on before, and you just want to get that kinky, loving feeling back, okay? So whatever your reasons are, you need to reconnect. Now, I don't have a magic cure, okay, for taking your relationship or my own from boring vanilla routine, haven't been kinky in a while, to getting your kink on all the time. You know, it's not a list of 101 things. I don't have that. But I can tell you what John Brownstone and I do, and even now, 3 years into our relationship, okay? And it's a combination of little things and big things. There's no, like, one thing, in my opinion, that you do. It's several little things, okay? So, here we go. Now, when I came home from my trip, I was a wreck, okay? The driving, the stress of the trip, the pure exhaustion from a week of helping my mom after she'd had surgery. All of it just, I was done. I was toast. It was awful. So, I get home and Daddy unpacked the car, dealt with the dog, and basically tucked me into bed almost as soon as I got there. Now, that was good for that night, but the next night, I was ready to be back to our normal routines. I'd already missed him for a week, and he'd missed him for a week, and I was done with that. So, for me, that meant getting back to my tasks as quickly as possible. Now, I think I've talked about this before, you know, making his coffee, getting his lunch ready, and then, of course, at the end of the day, which is my preferred task, kneeling for him. I mean, nothing, as a submissive, I don't know why, but nothing makes you feel quite as submissive as kneeling on the floor for your dominant. Now, everybody has the reasons for why you can't do your tasks. You know, sometimes you are apart and you just can't. Maybe you had a house guest and kneeling in front of your mom would have been awkward, you know? Maybe everything really did just get blown up in your life and you haven't done them. So this is what I'm telling you to do. It's time to get back to the basics. As a dominant, you need to sort of demand it. I mean, demand it. I'm not saying go all full on strict dominant, but sort of say, hey, or, you know, I have these expectations, or you're going to be doing them. And as a submissive, you need to say, oh my gosh, I need to do these things and I need to make them a priority. If you now have sort of the bandwidth to do that. You remember, I said there's all kinds of reasons you might need to reconnect. If one of you's been sick, or you've been away, or you've been on completely different shifts during the day, you know, you've been up all day and he's been up all night, okay, there's some obvious reasons. But if you just got into a rut and a routine, you kind of went, maybe it's not that important. Guess what? It's more important than you realize. Okay, so get back to the basics. Now, the next thing we do to reconnect, and you're probably all going to giggle because you think you know what I'm about to say, is that we get naked together as often as possible. Now, let me just, while you're going, well, duh, of course you get naked. No, I don't mean just sex, okay? It's not always sexual when we're naked. First of all, we sleep together naked, and we don't have sex every night. as much as I think both of us would probably prefer it. When we just need to sort of be, together and just exist in the same space without the craziness of life, we'll go take a shower together. Okay? It is a very intimate thing. Now, we might get a little playful in there. I am a sassy baby girl, and it is fun to smack daddy's ass and then go, oh, I don't know how that happened. We must have mosquitoes in here, okay? Because he says I cannot hit with any real force, and he's right. I'm not a spanker. I'm a spank-e. But we only get a little playful in there, okay? We know the kids are like a couple rooms away and could hear something, and that would be awkward. So it's just to be together and to be a little intimate in a different way and to be in each other's space, okay? I mean, it's a pretty intimate thing to wash another person's back or to lean against them while they're standing under the stream of warm water. I mean, that's just a nice quiet moment for us. Now, I'm not gonna lie. There is the nakedness due to sex, sure. I mean, when your relationship is a loving sexual one, mutual orgasms are always a good way to bring you closer together. And I advocate orgasms for both of you as often as you want and or are allowed, for those of you under orgasm control. Now, John Brownstone, on the other hand, has his own methods that are unique to him, and I don't have any say in on how we reconnect on a kinky level. Now, every morning, and they're little, and like I said, it's the little things. So every morning before he leaves for work, he kisses me goodbye, which is sweet and wonderful. And you know what? I think he should do that every morning before he leaves for work. And sometimes those kisses are soft and sweet and loving and gentle, and oh, they just make me all warm all over. And other times, well, then he adds a bit of spice. Now, he might pull my hair and hold my head still and back, forcing me back, and a little bit of pain, and ooh, it's yummy. And he might pinch my nipples while he kisses me. He may reach down and play with my clit until I'm like a whimpering, squishy mess in my chair, okay? Either way, no matter what he chooses to do, when he leaves for work and I'm like sitting there trying to put myself back together so I can function, I know exactly who's in charge and how wanted I am as a submissive and as a one, okay? So it doesn't take much, okay? That little tweak of a nipple or that little smack on the ass as somebody walks by, it's just sort of these reminders that we give each other and ourselves about how we are wanted in kinkier ways. Now, those are just some of the small things, and I'm sure other people, and if you're out there listening, you go, oh, well, I do this and I do that. If you have other small ways, feel free to share them, because there's always more to learn. But let's get into the big stuff. And again, this is not a long, extensive list, okay? This is not, 25 ways to reconnect in your kinky relationship. I have 2 things I do. We do. I don't do them. We do them. And they work, okay? I would not tell you these things if they did not work. They work very well for us. The first one is going to sound really boring, but okay. We talk. Yeah, it doesn't sound like much, I know. But I'm not talking about the conversations about the weather or the bills that need to get paid or the groceries that need to get purchased. We have those conversations too. That's all the time. No, we have deep, meaningful conversations, and especially when we haven't been able to connect in a while and things have been crazy, we will come together and we will talk about our life goals, where we're headed together as a couple and where we're headed, especially professionally, as individuals. What we want to accomplish this week, this month, this year, and further out than that. Now, yeah, some of it is about kink. Sure, hey, I saw this thing and I'd like us to try it, or ooh, maybe we can do this thing next year at this big conference. Where we live in Florida has a lot of kinky conferences, and so those really are conversations we have. But it's not always about that, Sometimes we're just talking about life. And it is very easy for your day-to-day life to get in the way of this kind of stuff. It's very easy for distance to screw you up. It's easy for your schedules to make it hard to do this. So you don't have time to talk about your goals and dreams. Now, I will say that sometimes we have these deep, meaningful conversations and they happen organically. I'm sitting in my chair, he's sitting on the couch, and one of us says, I've been thinking. And next thing you know, we have, just solved world hunger and world peace, in one conversation, if anybody else would listen to us. But really, sometimes you have to plan for these things, okay? And my way of doing it is to look at him, because I know his weakness is coffee, and I'll say, hey, you want to go get a cup of coffee and just talk? And if it's been a while for us to have done something like that, we will jump all over that. We have sat outside Starbucks for an hour or two and just talked about anything and everything. And when we get back home, we're in sync again. We are connected. We are in tune with one another again. And none of it was kinky. It was a conversation, y'all. So, not to completely disappoint though, there is another way, what I would consider a big way, to reconnect, and it is completely kinky, okay? So you had your conversation and that was great. Okay, I will talk about being naked now. I will talk about sex. I will talk about kinky fuckery. The other day, I'm not that far off, we actually got to make time for some big kinky fuckery, a couple of hours of just playing. And yes, I said make time, okay? Very few of us in this life just get handed on a routine basis a couple of hours to do whatever the hell we want without having a million responsibilities, whether it's kids or work or parents or, you know, whatever our obligations are. There's usually something clamoring for our time. So you do have to make time for this most of the time. Now, I got lucky and I managed to bat my big brown eyes in the exact right way to convince Daddy not to go to work the other day. Now, thankfully, he's fortunate enough he has vacation time and sick time built up that he can use for that kind of stuff. And I know not everybody has that, but if you do, I totally recommend using it when you can. So he had an appointment that he had to go to. He'd already made that day. And I had some work I needed to do. So while he was doing that, I was doing my work. And the promise was, by the time he got home, I would be done with work for the day. I was all his in whatever way that meant to him, which I was really hoping meant in a very kinky way. So it worked out. He did his thing. He came home. I was done with work. And I said, okay, what do we do now? Because the last thing I want to do is top from the bottom. And next thing I know, he is spanking my ass until my skin was on fire. Oh, it was delicious, y'all. And then he flipped me over and he ate me out. And I thought I was going to die. He'd already made me so sensitive with the spanking, and he'd been teasing me for a couple days that just the slightest touch on my clit, I was like just dying. And then he had me suck his cock. He leaned over me and had me suck his cock, and it was like this really dominant thing, and oh my god, it was delicious. And then he fucked me until we were both completely spent and boneless on the bed. I mean, he's soaking wet from sweat. I can't even open my eyes. I'm floating off in subspace. He'd done a lot of littler kinky things that I like. He'd smacked my face. He'd pulled my hair. He'd bitten me several places. Oh my god, it was awesome. Now, to add to that, to make it a little kinkier in a different way, in a way I wasn't used to, here's what he did. Oh my gosh. So our bedroom window was open. It's that time of year here in Florida where in the morning it's very comfortable, and by noon you're sweltering. It's hot. But we don't want to turn on the air conditioner yet, okay? We're clinging to winter and spring for as long as we can. So we keep our windows open. Well, we have neighbors that literally we share a wall and some insulation with them. They are that close, and we have good insulation. Walls are mostly soundproof, but they like to sit on their back porch during the day. And he knows that, and I know that, and we both know that the other one knows that. So he also added, oh, I'm not closing this window. I'm not turning on the air conditioner. We're doing this. The window is open, and you better keep your mouth shut. You better keep quiet so they don't catch us. He said, unless you don't care if they know. Now, I will say, since he was spanking my ass, he did cranked up the radio pretty loud to kind of mask some of the spanking, but I am much louder than any spanking, and so the added level of hotness was that I had to go through all that getting eaten out and not being able to scream out my orgasm. Oh my god, that was the hardest thing ever. And I did it. I did it, and it was delicious, and it was wonderful. And when we were done, and for the rest of the day, and even now, a couple days later, we are both loose and relaxed and pretty much able to handle whatever is going on in life with our sense of humor intact. We are reconnected on a very sexual, very kinky level, and it is wonderful. Okay, so I know it's not a lot of things that you have to do, and maybe that's a good thing. You know, I wouldn't want to be inundated with, here are these 75,000 things you should do in your daily routine to be connected to your partner. No, nobody wants that. It's the little things, okay? And it is sometimes the big things, and the big things are less frequent, which is why you need the littlest connections, doing your tasks and taking quiet moments to be intimate with one another. And, as dominants out there, finding those little, whatever your submissive's trigger is that just kind of makes them melt right there. Little things, hair pulling, a smack on the ass. Hey, for me, it's all of that, pinch my nipple and I'm like, oh, I'm yours, daddy. What do you want? Do those things. It will help you find if you've lost it and keep your kind of kinky center to your relationship. It will help you stay connected even when life is doing its damnedest to make sure that you can't do the things you want to do and you can't be as kinky as you want, okay? You have to keep it in the front of your mind and front and center and be mindful of these things. And if you can do that, then you can keep your relationship going and you can stay connected even when times are boring, even if they're good, but they're boring, or when times get stressful, because we all know life will get stressful. So take it all with a grain of salt. Try the things that maybe you haven't tried before. Get back to what you used to do. If you're like, oh yeah, we used to do all these things and now we haven't. Go back to them, okay? Try things out. If it doesn't work, don't do it again. If it works really well, keep doing it until it doesn't. And keep yourselves connected no matter what life throws at you, good or bad. Make sure you guys are at the center of the storm and the chaos that will swirl around you, okay? And these little things and then just a couple of big things, spaced out, you don't have to do them all the time, will help you do that. Okay, y'all, that's it for me this week. I actually have a much more in-depth episode coming up soon about submissives, and it's thanks to a suggestion from a listener, so that is coming up. These little short episodes are kind of weird to me now that I've done a whole bunch of longer ones, and they might be weird to you, or maybe you're like, oh, thank God she's not talking anymore. Anyway, if you've got questions on anything I've discussed in any episode, or DS in general, or whatever, or you've got suggestions for upcoming episodes, feel free to contact either myself or John Brownstone directly. We do answer emails that we get as long as they are appropriate. Inappropriate includes unsolicited dick pics or boob pics. Please don't send those. And if you ever send an email and you don't get a response, first of all, check your spam, because I go to spam a lot. And if not, reach out to me on social media. Sometimes my email does weird things and people don't get their messages and it's awful. So just keep that in mind. You can always reach out to us with things you want to hear about or things you have more questions about. Okay, y'all, keep it kinky, and we'll see you next week.